For many years, I worked for my local police department. Initially, I was out in the field, but a few months ago, I hurt my back from a fall. Ever since, I've been put on desk duty. I conduct interviews, do paperwork, and help the team coordinate throughout the day. It's usually pretty mundane work, except for the interviews. I coordinated with our lead detective in conducting interrogations, and I had a real knack for it. I was working late one night, sat at my desk, scanning police reports into our database, when a young man walked in. He had brown hair and was wearing a dark leather jacket. He approached the counter with a determined face. "Yes, sir, what can I do for you?" I barked out. His eyes darted to mine, and in a very serious voice, he said, "I'm here to turn myself in." He goes on to explain that he'd killed his mother, shooting her before chopping her into bits. My brows lift up and my eyes widen as I follow his abrupt confession. Is this some kind of prank? The man started mumbling something under his breath, my stomach turning as I realized he wasn't joking. He unzipped his jacket, revealing a blood-soaked shirt. My interrogation mode kicked in. I consoled him and managed to convince him to join me in the interview room. I called for a detective on my walkie-talkie as I brought the young man into the room. "Just wait right in there," I said. It didn't take long before our lead investigator arrived. I brought him up to speed, his reaction almost identical to mine. First, we sent for a few squad cars to go to his home. If what he was claiming was true, evidence would be easy to spot. We formulate a plan. Clearly the man was forthcoming with information, so we just wanted to keep him talking. We enter the room, sitting in some chairs across the desk from him. There was a pause after we sat down. Then he picked his head up from his desk and yelled out, "He made me do it. You have to believe me." Our investigator immediately cut in. "Who made you do it?" The kid kept apologizing, saying that he never wanted it to happen, but there was nothing he could do. "Listen, kid, mistakes happen, but we need to know who put you up to this." My walkie-talkie went off as the words left my mouth, the squad car finally making it to the young man's residence. I excused myself from the room as I retreated into the hallway to hear what they'd found. The officer that went to his listed address immediately heard gunshots upon arrival. He claims to have seen flashes from behind the curtains as he sat in their driveway. I told him to wait for backup to arrive and to make sure no one leaves the property. I peered in the glass looking at the young man as we waited. Sometime later, the captain phoned me directly. He explained that upon entering the residence, they noticed no one was home. After kicking in the door, they noted the absurd amount of blood in the living room. They found a fridge downstairs filled with the remains of the young man's mother, and although they had no explanation, the scent of gunpowder was still in the air. They located the weapon, still warm to the touch, sat on top of a coffee table. He cited that he alerted the forensics team, now en route to the location. Captain said he'd call me back with any updates as they came. Our detective emerged from the interview room, a frustrated look on his face. The kid's closing up on us, keeps babbling about paying off his debt, might be a junkie. I halted the detective's analysis, telling him about the gunshots right before our team arrived, how the gun was still warm, and that there was no way the young man could have done it. "Do you think he's taking the fall for someone?" the detective quickly countered. I was short for answers, but at this point, we already had an admission. We went back inside the interview room and placed him under arrest. The man let out a sigh of relief, his mumbling now resembling that of a prayer. As we led him outside, I made out the words, "devil," somewhere in his incoherent sentence formations. I secured him in the patrol car, and the detective took him to the jail. A few days went by. Every night the mystery of the case still replaying in my mind. My captain received a call that the kid had hung himself in his cell. the other prisoners abusing him for orchestrating such a vile act on his own mother. Later in the week, the lab results came back. The prints on the weapon matched the prints from the young man. A supplemented comment on the evidence form sent chills down my spine as I read it. Remains of mother were still warm upon discovery, despite being found inside the fully operational fridge. I went on to read that the estimated time of death was no more than an hour prior, that the blood on the young man's shirt was that of his mother. How is this possible? His prints match, but he was in the middle of confessing at the time of death. I sifted through the papers, phone records indicating that his mother had used her cell phone just before the assumed time of death. The recording we recovered was legitimate, and it was certainly her using the phone. I leaned back in my chair, even more puzzled than before with the evidence presented. I'd remembered the gun flashes the officer we sent out had seen, and quickly logged into our dashcam review software. I punched in the proper timestamp and navigated to the file, opening the video as I leaned closer to watch. The footage started with the officer pulling up. He put the car in park, and then flashes began illuminating the front room curtain. As the flashes brightened the screen, I couldn't help but to make out the subtle shadow in a couple of the frames. Visible for only a few moments, you could make out the silhouette of a horned devil holding a gun.